The world watched markets tumble and central banks flinch as Donald Trump's sweeping new tariffs turned from campaign rhetoric to economic reality. With up to 245% duties on China, a universal 10% levy on all imports, and a suspended but looming 24% penalty for Japan, this is economic warfare. At the Economic Club of Chicago, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell issued a blunt warning that Trump's tariffs are highly likely to push inflation up. And not just temporarily. The Fed now fears that supply chain shocks and tariff pass-throughs could drag out the pain.
How long does it take for the tariffs to have their effects on inflation? To the extent it takes longer and longer, that raises the risks that the public will begin to experience higher inflation. They'll come to expect it, and companies will come to expect it. So that risks higher inflation.
Markets immediately reacted. The Dow dropped 700 points. The Nasdaq plunged 3%. Nvidia and AMD both lost 7% in market value after filing warnings of multi-billion-dollar write-downs. Trump's tariffs hit tech hard. Chipmakers, semiconductor firms, and every supply chain tethered to Asia. Investment managers warn that this isn't a short-term slide, but in fact the start of an investor retreat.
Today's news, obviously, with some of the tariffs around some tech names and some basically reducing some trade around some semiconductor names, I think is what really we're seeing from a market reaction. We think you're going to continue to see tech on the downdraft just because a lot of this tariff noise is going to affect them specifically, because now we're focused on China. We think that better entry point is going to be later in the summer.
Even the Fed is torn. Inflation is above target. Growth is slowing, and Powell says both mandates, price stability and job growth, are now in conflict.
What we say is we will look at how far the economy is from each of those two goals, and then we'll ask, might there be different paces at which they would approach those goals? We'll look at those things and think about them, and we'll make what will no doubt be a very difficult judgment. Again, we're not experiencing that now, but we could well be in that situation, as I mentioned in my remarks.
California, the world's fifth largest economy, has had enough. Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Rob Bonta are suing the Trump administration, calling the tariffs illegal, unconstitutional, and catastrophic for the economy.
Check your 401k. Check your portfolio. If it includes NVIDIA, you should check it right now. NVIDIA, the great California company, one highlighted by this same Trump administration over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours, just got hit today with a $5.5 billion charge. This is recklessness at another level.
Together with Governor Newsom, I'm filing our 14th lawsuit against the president in less than 14 weeks. This one challenging the tariffs he unlawfully imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
The lawsuit argues that Trump invoked emergency powers he doesn't have using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act for something no other president ever attempted: blanket import taxes. California's almonds and auto industries, its ports, its GDP, all risk massive hits. Japan tried to negotiate. Yoshi Akazawa came to Washington hoping for tariff relief. Instead, he got a photo op and a vague promise from Trump.
For my part, I said that the United States tariff measures are deeply regrettable. My understanding is that the US is looking to make a deal in the next 90 days.
Japan remains a strategic ally, but is also reeling. With auto exports targeted by Trump's 25% tariff and no real concessions won, Tokyo left empty-handed. Unlike Japan, China isn't bending. Beijing says it won't entertain tariff number games and has refused to join negotiations unless the US shows mutual respect. Instead, China is weaponizing non-tariff measures from rare earth export bans to blocking Boeing deals and blacklisting US firms. Its new strategy: target America's advantage in services trade, including consulting, legal, education, and entertainment. That's where the US runs a surplus, and Beijing knows it hurts. There's also a shift in tone. State media has called Trump's tariffs bullying. China's trade ministry says we'll fight to the end. And even as the WTO complaint winds its way through, there's little sign of compromise. What happens if the Fed can't cut rates? What if inflation stays high while growth collapses? Economists warn this is the exact recipe for stagflation, slowing GDP with rising prices. And if investors start abandoning US treasuries, Washington's debt machine could seize.